In high concentrations, hydrogen sulfide can be fatal. This incident, however, was preventable. After completing this episode, you should be able to identify the characteristics of hydrogen sulfide, also known as sour gas, and by the chemical designation H2S. Exposure to hydrogen sulfide is possible in any industrial operation involving organic material. But the risks are greatest in the oil field. 1/3 of all hydrogen sulfide fatalities in the past 20 years occurred in oil and gas production and refining. Hydrogen sulfide is a gas made of 2 atoms hydrogen and 1 atom sulfur. H2S is created biologically over time by decaying organic material, often deep underground. Hydrogen sulfide is soluble in water, oil, and gas, and when it surfaces, H2S is released into the air. This doesn't mean H2S is part of every mixture extracted from the earth, but it might be. And until the hydrocarbons reach the surface, you can never be sure if H2S is present. Your senses are not reliable detectors of hydrogen sulfide. For one thing, H2S is colorless, so you can't see it. In low concentrations, you might smell or even taste the gas. Hydrogen sulfide is sweetish on the tongue, but to your nose, it's pretty foul, with an odor like rotten eggs. But at slightly higher, hazardous concentrations of sour gas, the sense of smell is quickly deadened. H2S is heavier than air, so it tends to collect in depressions or low places. However, a light breeze can still move hydrogen sulfide. In addition, H2S is flammable, so you should always be aware of potential ignition sources when H2S may be present. Exposure to H2S in low concentrations is not uncommon and is not a threat to your life or any part of your body. However, exposure to high concentrations is potentially lethal. As the concentration of hydrogen sulfide increases, the nose and mouth are desensitized, and in a matter of seconds, you can no longer smell or taste the gas. If emergency action is not immediately taken and H2S levels stay high, the result can be respiratory paralysis and even death. Now here's the preventable part. Dependable mechanical ways to detect hydrogen sulfide long before it reaches lethal levels should be in place at your work site in the form of sensors and personal H2S monitors. Your company should provide training in the use and response to these detectors. Respiratory protection can be worn to ensure your safety, and proven emergency measures exist for locations where H2S is present. Everybody has limits. That's true for what we can put out, as well as what we can take in. After completing this episode, you should be able to define threshold limit value, or TLV, and identify the TLV for hydrogen sulfide. In addition, you should be able to describe the effects of H2S at various exposure levels. In low concentration, H2S poses no risk to your health. But at higher levels, the gas can be extremely toxic, even lethal. So when does exposure go from safe to unsafe? The crossover point is called the threshold limit value, or TLV. Threshold limit values are established for all types of hazardous substances. TLV is generally defined as the concentration at which all workers may be repeatedly exposed to a substance, day after day, without adverse effects. The air around us carries microscopic particles measured in parts per million, or ppm. H2S is toxic enough to kill at 1,000 parts per million. The threshold limit value of hydrogen sulfide, or what's safe for repeated exposure, is 10 parts per million. Volumes of H2S between 10 and 1,000 parts per million present increasing levels of toxicity. Threshold limit values for a given substance are always the same, regardless of conditions or location. Let's go back to the definition of threshold limit value. All workers includes everyone in normal health, regardless of their gender, race, or age. 10 parts per million is therefore a very conservative number and recognized as universally safe. Repeatedly exposed day after day means the exposure received day in, day out during typical 8-hour periods where sour gas is present. Repeated exposure to H2S at or below the TLV does not increase susceptibility or build up a backlog of toxin. The body can regularly and easily process low concentrations of hydrogen sulfide without long-term harm. The 3 most poisonous gases on Earth. Only one occurs in nature, without manipulation by man. Hydrogen sulfide, also known as sour gas. Fortunately, we've learned how to prepare and how to be safe. After completing this episode, you should be able to identify safe procedures for working in areas where hydrogen sulfide may be present. The vast majority of the time, hydrogen sulfide will not be a threat, but at any time, the gas can be released. This doesn't mean you will necessarily be exposed to lethal levels or that you can't anticipate trouble. Sites where H2S may occur should have in place a variety of reliable, safe procedures and monitors. Before entering a work site, your supervisor should show you where H2S is a possibility. He should also show you the location of safe briefing and assembly areas. Go immediately to these places following the correct evacuation route if hydrogen sulfide concentration reaches hazardous levels. Although sour gas is invisible, the posted signs are not. Read them all, since each one carries a specific warning and may describe emergency plans. H2S, even though heavier than air, can be carried on the slightest breeze. Wind socks or streamers are hung at high points to show wind direction. Devices monitoring the surrounding air for H2S content are mounted in places where sour gas can escape. Meters indicate levels above and below the threshold limit value of 10 parts per million. When concentrations exceed 10 ppm, a red light will flash and an alarm will sound. In an evacuation, move 90 degrees crosswind from the source of the hydrogen sulfide and then upwind. Personal monitors can be worn on your pocket or shirt collar, basically anywhere in the breathing zone, and have the clear advantage of being closest to you and a sour gas leak. An alarm warning will sound when levels exceed 10 ppm. In contaminated areas where hydrogen sulfide concentration is greater than 10 ppm, one recommendation is to work in pairs using the buddy system. Each person wears his own protective breathing equipment. One enters the work area with a harness and safety line, while the other holds the line at the perimeter. Working safely means knowing your resources for H2S detection and monitoring, regularly checking all protective equipment to ensure it's in working order, and it means knowing about special equipment or procedures that are specific to your site. Knowing how to be safe is the best way to avoid trouble or to get out of trouble's way in an emergency. Sour gas doesn't need much of an opening to enter your body. The simple act of breathing may be all it takes. After completing this episode, you should be able to describe the physical effects of hydrogen sulfide and how the gas enters the body. Hydrogen sulfide can enter the body in 2 ways: inhalation and absorption. Inhalation is the most common way, though you may be unaware of breathing the gas. H2S is invisible, and even in low concentrations, the gas will quickly deaden the sense of smell. Hydrogen sulfide enters the bloodstream through the lungs, where the gas inflames the moist membranes. H2S replaces the oxygen and, with sufficient penetration, paralyzes the respiratory tract. The second way is absorption. Since hydrogen sulfide is water-soluble, anything moist will act as an agent. However, absorption is rarely a factor in H2S exposure. Inhalation allows sour gas to enter and affect the body much more quickly than absorption. H2S does form sulfuric acid, H2SO4, when it comes in contact with water or body fluids, possibly causing the skin to burn and leaving a rash. The effects of hydrogen sulfide will vary according to site conditions, the weather, and the worker's general health. But below the threshold limit value of 10 ppm, every location and everyone's safety is assured. Above the TLV, as concentrations rise, the effects of sour gas escalate in severity. Below 10 parts per million, there's the odor of rotten eggs. At 50 ppm for 15 minutes or more, the sense of smell may be deadened. At this point, eyes and throat may sting and feel dry. You may start coughing. Prolonged exposure will lead to drowsiness, loss of appetite, or nausea. At 200 ppm, irritation in the eyes and on the skin becomes harsh. Breathing will be difficult and behavior irrational. A concentration of 300 ppm is considered immediately dangerous to life or health. 500 ppm and above will paralyze the respiratory system in less than 10 minutes. A concentration of 1000 ppm causes immediate unconsciousness and possibly death. H2S concentrations are rarely stable. The gas may release at different rates, or shifting winds may affect gas levels. Furthermore, activity makes you a moving target, so the symptoms may take hours to develop or turn lethal in seconds. Even more reason to check monitors regularly when sour gas is a possibility. Relatively small amounts of H2S are all that's needed to affect you, so stay alert and keep breathing easy. Hydrogen sulfide is easily dispersed. The gas moves through liquid or air. Anyone or anything the gas touches may be fundamentally changed. After completing this episode, you should be able to identify the hazards of sour gas. The oil and gas industry faces 3 hazards with hydrogen sulfide: corrosion, toxicity, and flammability. Corrosion due to H2S requires water and some sort of containment. Corrosion can take a long time, sometimes years. All this makes the corrosion harder to detect. Water can combine with hydrogen sulfide to form sulfuric acid, which can cause a general weakening in most metals. Metals like steel, copper, zinc, and all their alloys. The effects are especially harsh in the presence of carbon dioxide and oxygen. The corrosion leads to blistering, embrittlement, and stress cracking, all of which can cause leaks. The toxic effects of H2S may be felt in hours or in seconds, depending on concentration levels. Low concentrations have more local effects on the body, to the eyes and mucous membranes. Systemic effects occur at higher concentrations and impact the nervous, respiratory, and gastrointestinal systems. Concentration levels do not affect all people the same way. One worker could feel dizzy, while another, inhaling the same air, could fall unconscious. Despite the toxicity, repeated exposures to sour gas below the TLV do not result in cumulative effects, although repeated exposures might increase susceptibility. Hydrogen sulfide is also flammable. Concentrations need not be high, and 500 degrees Fahrenheit is all that's needed to ignite the gas. Not much when you consider a cigarette burns at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. While burning, H2S produces another toxic gas, sulfur dioxide. Not only that, sour gas can become explosive when mixed with oxygen. Remember, hydrogen sulfide is corrosive, toxic, and flammable, so be careful out there. After completing this episode, you should be able to identify what to do when hydrogen sulfide levels exceed the threshold limit value of 10 parts per million. At every site, there are plans for responding to levels of hydrogen sulfide above 10 ppm. Your supervisor should have the details for your site, but generally, it goes like this. Everyone has a role in these situations. Some personnel will stay, some will immediately evacuate. So know your role. Safe briefing station locations are often designated for each job site. In most cases, you should proceed to the safe briefing station. Learn the location of emergency and rescue equipment, like respiratory protection, lifelines, harnesses, and stretchers. Ensure all are in working order. Prior to starting work, note the wind direction by observing the windsock at any H2S location. Monitors and detectors sound alarms when sour gas levels rise above the threshold limit value. Alarms vary according to the concentrations and the device. When a sour gas alarm sounds, leave the area by moving 90 degrees crosswind from the sour gas source until clear, and then upwind to a safe briefing station. Once there, help determine the extent of the hazard. Take steps to control or limit the release following established procedures. Alert and protect personnel and the public, and comply with local, state, and federal regulations for notifying authorities. In certain H2S conditions, you may need to don an air-supplied respirator. Air-supplied respirators come in two forms. With a self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBA, you carry the air supply. With a hose line unit, the air supply is separate. The SCBA typically provides 30 minutes of air when full, while the hose line unit provides more than 30 minutes of air depending on the rig. A separate self-rescue or emergency air pack usually contains 5 minutes of air. To keep contaminated air out, the mask needs a clean, tight seal to the face. Facial hair can prevent a good seal, so know whether your job site allows beards or sideburns. You should receive training in how to use supplied air respirators if you work in areas where H2S is present. Getting the respirator on quickly when needed is imperative, since H2S concentrations can rise dramatically in seconds. After completing this episode, you should be able to identify proper rescue procedures and first aid treatment for H2S victims. Despite everyone's best efforts, there may come a time when you have to deal with a hydrogen sulfide emergency. If H2S concentrations spike sharply, the monitor alarms may not provide sufficient warning for evacuation. A coworker may go down. The first impulse is to go to him. Don't. You can't hold your breath long enough. Get away from the H2S source by moving 90 degrees crosswind from the source and upwind.
Man down, better give me some help.
Notify others immediately of the situation. Then, don an air-supplied respirator quickly and calmly, making sure to get an airtight seal with the face mask. Sour gas at its most toxic first paralyzes the victim's respiratory system, yet cardiac failure is still 5 to 10 minutes off, enough time for you to protect yourself and rescue the victim. Return to the fallen worker and help him to safety. If the contaminated area is a pit or a container or a dark space, the buddy system is most effective. Lifelines and harnesses help ensure the safety of the victim and the rescuers. Move the victim 90 degrees crosswind from the H2S source and then upwind. Be sure the surrounding air is below the TLV before giving cardiopulmonary resuscitation, also known as CPR. CPR is a combination of artificial respiration and cardiac massage. If the victim is not breathing, be sure the airway is clear and give 2 breaths, then check for a pulse. If there is no pulse, begin cardiac massage. Do not give any assistance for which you have not been trained. Determine the extent of the trauma as best you can. A fall may have caused other injuries. A first aid kit will have field treatments for minor cuts and bruises. As soon as possible, get qualified medical assistance. We hope you're never faced with a hydrogen sulfide emergency. But if you are, remembering what you learned here today may save your life or the life of someone else.